I'm Neil Grady, 49 years old, Senior Infrastructure Director at Duratek Solutions, Columbus, Ohio, 9 years at the same company. And the moment I knew it was over, the real moment was not when she fired me on a Zoom call in front of 80 people. It was 7:04 a.m. on a Tuesday when I tried to pull up the shipping integration repo and got an access denied screen. No warning, no email, just a red error message. I had been removed from 3 project channels overnight, quietly. While I was asleep, I sat there with my coffee going cold and thought, okay, so today is the day. I'm not the guy who presents at conferences or puts thought leader in his bio. I'm the guy who built the thing those people talk about on stage. I rewrote our disaster recovery protocol after we nearly lost a client in 2019. I negotiated our vault breach escrow terms line by line. I kept the engine running when nobody else knew where the engine was. 9 years, and I was good at it. Then Kayla Odom showed up, 31 years old, Walt Odom's daughter, Walt being the founder and CEO, the guy who built Duratek from a 4-person shop into a $22 milligistic software company. Kyla had an MBA from Wharton, a title that read VP of Growth and Transformation, and a complete certainty that anything built before 2020 was basically a fax machine. She arrived in week 1 with slides. Always slides, modular frameworks, velocity sprints, client delight ecosystems. Words stacked on top of each other like a structural argument made of nothing. She started calling people like me legacy headcount, not to my face. She was never that direct. But I found out 3 weeks into her tenure. I got BCC'd on an email she meant to send only to the CFO. She was reviewing cost centers. My name came up. One line stood out. Neil Grady is essentially a human patch cable, expensive and unnecessary in a wireless world. I read it twice, closed my laptop, went and refilled my coffee. Then I came back and verified the Vault Bridge escrow parameters were still active. My name was still there on page 11, section 4, right where I put it 3 years ago. Here's the thing about clause 17C that nobody at Duratek ever bothered to read. When we brought Vault Bridge on in 2021 to manage our source code escrow, I sat through every clause in that contract. Most people treat escrow agreements like car insurance. You sign it, file it, forget. It exists until something explodes. I did not forget. I negotiated a specific provision. The named validator, which was me, could not be removed from the contract without a formal compliance review filed with Vault Bridge and cleared by both internal legal and an external auditor. If that process was skipped, the system assumed hostile conditions and triggered an automatic 72-hour lockdown of all source code repositories. No access, no pushes. No rollbacks, nothing moved. I also wrote the recovery script for our logistics routing system, personally, the one that kept order confirmations flowing to our 6 enterprise clients, including a retail chain with 340 stores that processed weekend inventory every Friday afternoon. My identity token, stored on a physical device in my desk drawer, was hardwired into that system as a 2-factor verification checkpoint. The token was designed to auto-deactivate after 4 hours without a refresh ping from that physical device. I built that feature myself. No device present meant no refresh ping. No refresh ping meant the token expired and the system sealed shut. When I walked out, I took the device with me. The system did exactly what I designed it to do. There was also a secondary dependency tied to our logistics routing layer. Technically optional, not listed in my job description, something I had been maintaining out of habit because nobody else knew it existed. It was coming up for renewal the week Kayla sent that email. I did not renew it. That was not sabotage. You cannot sabotage something you were never formally assigned to maintain. I just stopped doing extra work that nobody had ever asked me to do, documented, or compensated me for. There is a legal difference, an important one. The weeks after that email were a slow-motion version of what I already knew was coming. Kayla kept running her roadmap sessions, kept putting up slides with impossible timelines, kept looking at the infrastructure schema like it was written in a foreign language and deciding the problem was the language, not her reading level. She canceled the quarterly Vault Bridge compliance reviews I had been running since 2021. Too much overhead, she said. Legacy process. I logged that in my own records and said nothing. She pushed for a new deployment window that bypassed several integration checkpoints. I raised it once in a team meeting. Calmly. One question. What is the fallback if the Vault Bridge integration breaks mid-deployment? She smiled the way people smile when they think you are the problem. Are we planning for failure now? I'm planning for reality, I said. The API load has not been validated at this volume. She moved on. Nobody backed me up. I did not expect them to. That night I double-checked the clause. Still active. Still my name, still enforceable. I went home and started prepping the garage door I had been putting off painting for 2 months. Old clothes, drop cloth on the driveway, roller in hand. Something about the work felt right, steady, under control. 2 weeks later, I logged into that town hall and saw 84 names in the participant list. I already knew what was coming. The access denied screen that morning had told me everything. Kayla opened the town hall the way she always did. Energy, momentum, transformation. She had a new slide deck, new buzzwords, new confidence that this was her moment. I kept my camera on and said nothing. She went through the usual warm-up. Duratek is evolving. We are optimizing for scale. We are building for the next chapter. Then she got to the part she had been rehearsing. As part of this transition, we will be phasing out a few legacy operations roles. Neil's position is among them. We appreciate his contributions and wish him well. Just like that. No prior conversation, no exit meeting. No warning beyond the access denied screen. I had already seen it 7:04 that morning. I was still on camera, visible to all 84 people on that call. Engineers, managers, contractors, HR, and Walt, who was dialed in somewhere off camera as usual, probably in his office with the door half closed. I did not flinch. I did not type anything in the chat. I did not ask to be unmuted. I had my personal laptop open beside my work machine. I had been using it earlier to walk through a dashboard demo for a client handoff document. The terminal window was still open in the background. I pulled it up, typed one line slowly, and hit enter. Anyone on the engineering team who knew what they were looking at would have recognized it as the validator session close command. A clean, deliberate shutdown of my authentication context. Then I closed both laptops. No farewell message, no out of office, no Slack status update with a wave emoji. I just stood up, picked up the physical token device from my desk drawer, put it in my jacket pocket, and walked out. The system had 4 hours before the token refresh failed. I was not going to be there when it did. I drove home, changed into old clothes, and went back to the garage door. Roller tray, the same gray paint I had picked out 3 weeks ago and never gotten around to using. My phone was face down on the workbench. I could feel it buzzing against the wood every few minutes. I kept painting. The first integration failure hit at 12:14 p.m. I know that because Perry Walsh told me later. Perry was a back-end engineer, 38 years old, had been at Duratek for 7 years. He watched the whole thing unfold from his desk. It started small, a low-priority sync between our routing layer and a regional carrier API, dropped a connection. The on-call engineer flagged it as transient, probably a blip. Then the CI/CD pipeline stalled mid-build. Then the access token rotation loop hit the failsafe and every monitor in the dev room lit up with the same message. Vault bridge notice, escrow release condition triggered. Awaiting external review, clause 17C activated. Perry said the room went quiet for about 4 seconds. Then everyone started talking at once. By 12:47, the CTO had confirmed they did not have the override key. Not just that they could not find it, they could not have it. The protocol did not work that way. No named validator sign-off meant no access. The system was not waiting for a password. It was waiting for a process that Kayla had skipped entirely. Meanwhile, the secondary dependency I had stopped renewing quietly finished expiring. The routing layer started throwing errors on order confirmation requests. Nothing catastrophic in the first hour. Just enough friction to make the monitoring boards look like a Christmas tree at 1:20 p.m. The first enterprise client called in 340 stores. Friday afternoon inventory cycle, their order confirmation system was returning timeouts. Their ops team wanted to know if Duratek was within SLA terms. Their contract language was specific and their legal team was already copied on the email. That was roughly 180 collards in K in weekend inventory sitting in a queue that was not moving. Kayla reportedly spent the first 30 minutes trying to route around it. She pulled 2 engineers into a side call, asked them to identify the bottleneck. They identified it immediately. Vault bridge lockdown, clause 17C, named validator not present. She asked if they could bypass the checkpoint at the integration layer. One of the engineers, a guy named Glenn, who had been at Duratek longer than Kayla had been out of college, looked at her and said that would void the client contract. All 6 of them. She asked if they could comment out the integration reference in the config file and redeploy. Glenn closed his laptop and said he needed to loop in legal before touching anything. That was the moment Kayla's afternoon stopped being about transformation and started being about survival. Legal pulled the Vault Bridge contract at 1:45. They found my name on page 11. Then they found the amendment I had filed in 2022. Then they found the quarterly compliance review logs I had been submitting since the contract started, right up until Kayla canceled the process in her second week. Every entry timestamped, every sign-off documented. By 2:00 p.m., the CTO had stopped saying the phrase manual override and started saying we need to find Neil. My phone buzzed again. I set the roller down, checked the screen. Kayla on Slack, 2:07 p.m. Hey Neil, sorry for the mix-up earlier. Can we chat for a sec? 2:10 p.m. Team is kind of stuck. Let us reset. Water under the bridge. 2:15 p.m. Neil. I did not open any of them. I put the phone back face down and picked up the roller. The garage door was starting to look good. Even coat, no drips. Exactly what I wanted. At 2:30 p.m., a number I did not recognize called. I let it go to voicemail. 4 minutes later, I played the message. A woman named Renee Stafford, lead counsel at ArcPoint Capital, the primary investor behind Duratek. Her voice was flat and efficient. She said she wanted to discuss independent compliance oversight. She said the terms would be mine. She left a callback number. I finished the section of trim I was working on, cleaned the roller, and called her back at 4:15. The conversation lasted 19 minutes. She did not waste any of them. ArcPoint had been looped in by their board liaison around 2 p.m. when the enterprise client SLA breach became visible. A 180 collisionally weekend inventory disruption across 340 stores was not something they were going to sit on. They had reviewed the Vault Bridge contract, identified Clause 17C, pulled the compliance review history, and traced everything back to 2 decisions. My termination and the cancellation of the quarterly review process. Both made by Kayla, neither approved by the board. Renee was not offering me my old job. She was offering a retained compliance authority position, independent of Duratek's internal org chart, reporting directly to ArcPoint's board. Full authority over escrow protocol, compliance audit, and infrastructure continuity review. No internal executive could override my scope. Any attempt to remove me from the role required a full investor vote and third-party arbitration. She said Kayla was on leave as of that afternoon, pending review of her decisions and their financial and legal exposure. I asked one question. I told her I wanted my name on every compliance audit report going forward, permanently, as the original architect of the system. She said that provision was already in the draft. I said yes. The paperwork arrived by courier the next morning. I did not answer the door when it knocked. I let it sit on the porch until I finished my coffee. Then I brought it inside, read every page, and signed it. 2 days later, the emergency board meeting was scheduled. Walt Odom sat at the head of the table. 64 years old, built this company from nothing, and now he was sitting in a glass-walled conference room looking at a liability report with his daughter's name on every page. He had not said much publicly since the lockdown started, but Perry told me later that Walt had pulled Kayla into his office the afternoon of the lockdown, closed the door, and the conversation lasted 40 minutes. Nobody heard specifics. But when Kayla came out, she did not go back to her desk. She went to her car. Walt did not look angry when I walked into that board meeting. He looked like a man who had done the math and did not like the answer. Renee Stafford was on the investor side of the table. 2 other ArcPoint representatives were with her. The CTO was present, quiet, keeping his eyes on his notepad. Legal had a stack of binders. Kayla's chair was empty. Renee opened the meeting. No small talk. She asked me to walk the room through Clause 17C. I kept it clean, no editorializing, just the facts in order. Clause 17C prevents unauthorized termination of compliance-critical personnel whose access governs third-party escrow systems. The clause triggers a 72-hour automated lockdown if the named validator is removed without a formal compliance review filed with Vault Bridge and cleared by internal legal and an external auditor. I designed the clause in 2021, negotiated the terms, and built the logistics recovery architecture around it. The quarterly review process I maintained documented ongoing compliance until those reviews were canceled in January. Removing me without following the documented process did not just create an HR issue. It created a contract breach that produced a confirmed $180 client impact within the first 4 hours and put 5 additional enterprise SLAs at risk. Nobody interrupted. One of the ArcPoint representatives asked how long it would take to restore full system access once the override was authorized. I told him the authorization process required my signature on the Vault Bridge release form, plus a 2-hour audit confirmation from their external team. Once that cleared, full access would be restored within 90 minutes. He asked if I was prepared to authorize that today. I said yes. I had already reviewed the release form that morning. Walt looked at me from the end of the table. His voice was quieter than I expected. You built that clause knowing this could happen. I did not frame it as an accusation. Neither did he. It was just a statement of fact hanging in the room. I built it knowing someone someday would skip the process, I said. I did not know when. I did not know who. I just knew the system needed a failsafe that did not depend on anyone remembering to care. He nodded once, slowly. Like a man absorbing something that had been true for a long time and he was only now getting around to accepting it. Renee moved things forward. The release authorization was signed. The vault breach audit team was already on standby. System access would be restored before end of business. Then she turned to the room and confirmed that Kayla Odom's leave status would be converted to a formal separation pending completion of the financial exposure review. The VP of Growth and Transformation role would not be backfilled in its current form. Nobody argued. Nobody looked surprised. The CTO let out a slow breath and leaned back in his chair like someone had finally turned off a loud noise he had been hearing for weeks. The meeting wrapped in just under an hour. People filed out without much conversation. A few nods. One of the legal associates held the door open for me on the way out. Small thing. I noticed it. I walked past Kayla's old office on the way to the elevator. The door was open. Her desk was cleared, except for a half-empty water bottle and a whiteboard still covered in Q3 growth targets written in green marker, arrows pointing up. Numbers circled. A lot of confident handwriting that did not mean anything anymore. I did not stop, did not take a picture, did not say anything to anyone about it. My new badge had been couriered to my house the morning after I signed the contract. Different color than my old one. No department name on it. Just my name and one word beneath it. Oversight. The logo on the back was arc points, not Duratek's. I wore it on a plain lanyard. Nothing fancy. The first week back, I kept my head down and did the work, pulled every compliance log from the past 18 months. Documented the gaps created when Kayla canceled the review cycle. Filed the corrective action report with Vault Breach. Rebuilt the quarterly audit schedule and sent it to Renee for board-level sign-off. Nobody from Duratek's internal leadership tried to redirect my work or question my scope. I think they understood that was not an option anymore. Walt stopped by my office on a Thursday afternoon. He knocked on the open door even though it was already open. Old school habit. He came in, looked around the room for a second, then sat down in the chair across from my desk. He did not open with small talk. "I owe you a straight answer on something," he said. I waited. I knew she was moving too fast. I saw the review cancellations, saw her flagging your role. He paused. I let it go because I wanted to believe she had it figured out. That is on me. I did not tell him it was fine. It was not fine. But I also was not interested in holding it over him. The clause had handled what needed to be handled. The rest was just reality catching up to decisions that should not have been made. She did not have bad intentions, I said. She just did not know what she did not know, and she did not ask. Walt looked at the desk for a moment. No, she did not ask. He stood up, gave me one more nod, and left. That was the last time we talked about it directly. Moving forward meant exactly that. Perry Walsh messaged me the following week. He had heard through the team that I was back and what my new role looked like. His message was short. Not sure I'm supposed to say this, but that was the cleanest thing I have ever seen anyone do in 9 years at this company. I left it on read for a day. Then I wrote back 2 words. Do good work. That was it. That was the whole conversation. I did not want to be a legend around the office. I did not want people retelling the story at lunch or turning it into something bigger than what it was. What it was simple. I built a system. I documented it. I maintained it for 3 years. Someone decided I was not worth the line item. The system disagreed. There's nothing heroic about that. It is just what happens when you do the work right and you do not cut corners, even when nobody is watching. I have been in the compliance authority role for 4 months now. The quarterly Vault Bridge reviews are running again. The audit trail is clean. 2 of the enterprise clients actually sent written confirmation that they were satisfied with the continuity response and the corrective measures filed. The secondary dependency I had stopped renewing got formally assigned to a junior engineer on the infrastructure team. Documented scope, written into his job description the way it should have been from the start. I still have the token device. It sits on my desk now, not in a drawer. Small gray rectangle, no markings. Most people who come into my office do not know what it is. That is fine. Some things do not need explaining to everyone. They just need to work when it matters. The garage door looks good, by the way. Finished the second coat the Saturday after the board meeting. Even coverage, clean edges, exactly the color I picked out. My neighbor stopped by while I was cleaning up and said it looked sharp. I thanked him and meant it. Small things, that is mostly what a good week looks like at 49. The work is solid, the systems are running, and nobody is calling you a patch cable behind your back anymore. If you have spent any time in a place where the people who actually built things got called legacy, got talked over, got optimized out by someone with a better title and worse instincts, then you already know what this story is really about. It is not about revenge. It is not about being right. It is about the fact that real work leaves a record. Competence compounds quietly, and someday the people who dismissed you are going to need something that only you know how to unlock. Build the clause, maintain the system. Do not skip the documentation even when it feels like nobody cares. They will care eventually. If this story hit close to home, share it with someone who has been called legacy one too many times. They will know exactly what it means.